For this short chat in Perspectives, I thought I would just touch upon the topic of information and awareness, because it's a subject that I spoke about in a recent talk. Now, this is an issue which is so much more entangled in these days because we are awash with information. In fact, people are telling us we are drowning in information and misinformation. And whilst there's a lot of talk about that, there's very little talk about discernment and having awareness about information, because whereas we tend to still have this concept that information is a very two-dimensional linear way of exchange, that we receive information from some source and we think about it and we consider it, and then we decide whether we believe it or not. But that's not really so much the case, because information has a carrier, has a medium. As Marshall McLuhan said, the medium is the message. And these days information comes in multiple layers, and it comes with a frequency, an energy signature. Certain information can make us feel good, can make us feel scared, depressed, and we do not know if there's any kind of subliminals being put into the information. We know that the music industry, for example, chose a particular range of hertz for broadcasting that music, and we are generally not aware of what effects that has physiologically on our body when we receive music, because we tend to just take it as one package. We don't take away, decipher and kind of examine all the parts of how the music is arranged and its effect upon us. Same with any kind of information from mainstream news. We are not aware again of its subliminal impact upon us, or whether certain trigger words are being used, whether neuro-linguistic programming is being included in the broadcast. But on top of that, I think the basic fundamental issue is that we have been conditioned to accept external information and external events on a very superficial level. And that's also because our five senses, our regular senses, are trained externally to pick up information and filter it into us. And then we filter that information through our layers of conditioning. So again, depending on our social, cultural, political, religious conditioning, when we receive information, it goes through that type of filter. So two people sitting next to each other, receiving the same information, will interpret that differently depending on their layers of filtering. But I think another thing we have to take into account is that as human beings, utilizing five senses, we are operating on a very superficial level of the life experience, which is a mostly material, physical level. And even if you talk about the sixth sense, that still brings up a lot of kind of reaction, giggles, kind of like, you're living in fantasy land, and yet there's a psychic element of the environment that is operating continuously. In fact, we exist in a physical and a metaphysical environment simultaneously. We can go as far as to say that the background of life is metaphysical, the foreground is physical, and we exist mostly through our senses in the foreground, and we are not so much as consciously aware of the metaphysical background to life. And we can talk about, that's been talked about in primary, secondary causes, for example, as a very simple analogy. Um, you know, a young child, for example, may see the leaves on a tree blowing, and they are considering and focusing on the leaves, but they don't really have um, a sharp awareness about the nature of the wind that creates the leaves that are blowing. And that is how we live as in a regular life as human beings. We are living through secondary effects, and we are conditioned specifically uh, not to focus on the primary causes. It's the simple trick of the magician and the white rabbit. The magician pulls a white rabbit out of the hat, but you're focusing on the white rabbit and you're not seeing what the other hand is doing or what the magician is doing. And that's how mostly events occur in our physical domain. When we are faced with an event, let's say a war, and our mainstream media tells us the reasons for that war, we're not giving the background causes or the background forces and influences which created that effect. And we have physical forces. Just to give a very general example, we are told, for example, that the Second World War was just because of the rise of National Socialism, the Nazi Party in Germany, because of the megalomaniac of Hitler wanting to conquer other territories and promote the Aryan race, and we have the Second World War. We're not told about the Anglo-American establishment behind the scenes grooming certain people in the social Nazi party, financing them also through London and New York. This is all heavily researched now, so it's not a conspiracy. So there's a physical forces, but behind that there are also non-physical forces which are operating through the physical world. And we are definitely mostly not aware of those unless we have advanced capacities and faculties of perception. So we live at all times in a multi-layered environment. We have the very kind of front seat, a front of house physical view. So let's say we're in a theatre and we have the front row seats. And those front row seats are directly in front of the stage, and we are able to see in clear view the theatre. We see the actors walking on and off, etc. But of course we're limited to the stage because we're so close to it, We're myopic, we're that close. And we don't have the lens to see wider. And that is mostly the way we live life, on the furthest front row seat, seeing what's directly being put on the stage in front of us. Now, if we get granted or permitted, or we through work on our perceptions we permit ourselves a seat further back, then the angle of lens of view widens, and we see more than the stage. We may be able to see people in the wings of the stage who are directing the actors and preparing them to walk onto the stage. And then further still, there are seats going back to the back of the theatre hall, and then we may get a much further view. We may see that there's a team organising the theatre crew. So not only the people in the wing, but there's a support team that are helping with the curtains and the arrangements, and maybe helping with directing the orchestra, helping with forgotten lines, and they are, we see them further back. And further still, if you are able to have your own private box, you're even up a level, and then you can get a panoramic view, and you may see even further. But they are all aspects of the physical dimension. So imagine if you are then able to leave the body, transcend the theatre, and then perceive the non-visible forces that are impacting and influencing the physical environment upon the theatre. And they may be influencing people's moods, people's psychology, the senses, and maybe even influencing the actors without their knowing about it. And that would give us a wholly different dimension. So I would say that this is a basic analogy for how we are in physical life. And majority of people, we are on the front seat with the five senses, and the stage is right in front of us. So everything that we are given, and especially now in the last couple of years when events are converging in a great intensity to create a strong visual stage in front of us. So we see the pandemic response, the response of the World Economic Forum. We have now the breakdown in supply chains. We have the geopolitical war chessboard across the world, and we have the interventions in food security, the interventions in pharmaceuticals industry, in health, biosecurity, biocapitalism, the kind of interventions into the economy, the breakdowns in the economy. All these are on the stage, and we are being told that this is how it is. This is the drama. And unless we make a choice, a free will choice to widen our lens of perception, to get up from our front row seat and take a seat behind us, and then, if you wish to take further development of understanding what's happening, to then take a further step back. All this entails that in order to have a wider perception on life, on physical life, we have to integrate it with the inner world, because it's the inner world that gives us or allows us a greater perceptive range of understanding and analyzing events. If not, then we are relying wholly on external information and an awareness based on external information and on our conditioning and our filters. That's a very limited level. And even if we get past our filters of conditioning and filters of let's say, our social, cultural filters, the conditioning of our religious, political backgrounds, that's still in the physical domain. So without bringing an inner world to meet the outer world, then we're always going to be walking on one leg, or hopping on one leg. You don't walk so much on one leg. And this is the situation we find ourselves in, is that we are being given a reality consensus which is only adequate for the five physical senses, or the one-eyed, one-legged person, which is very superficial. And so I would caution at this time of how we receive information, what we're being given, to be aware that this is the front row seat perspective on the socially managed and manipulated drama on the stage in front of us. And we need to discern where we are sitting, what senses we are using to receive that information, and what faculties we have for enlarging our lens of perception. Because if we do not expand our faculties of perception, then we will only be given the direct theatre performance, and that is in these times not sufficient. So that just came to my mind now, and I wish to share that. Um, and I hope that those words have been of any benefit. The drama continues, but at the same time, the expansion of our awareness and perception also continues.